It has been described as the biggest court case in the world. Judges at the International Court of Justice in The Hague, the United Nations' top legal body, have been asked to rule on whether major polluting nations can be held to account for causing climate change and its harmful effects. Smaller island nation-states say rising sea levels place their very existence at stake.
Under international law, states have obligations. Obligation to act with due diligence, to prevent significant harm to the environment, to reduce the emissions and provide support to countries like mine, to protect the human rights of present and future generations.
The judges will consider not only legally binding climate agreements, but also international human rights law. The court is hearing testimony from countries responsible for much of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, including the United States.
International human rights law, however, does not obligate states to mitigate anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions, nor does it currently provide for a human right to a healthy environment, although the United States remains open to participating in a state-led process to develop such a right.
Many big polluters argue that the only relevant laws are derived from existing climate agreements and that other legislation isn't relevant, says Henry Ridgwell of the Centre for International Environmental Law.
We effectively heard them argue that the only relevant law from which any legal obligations can be sourced is the Paris Agreement. And when you actually look at the text of that agreement, it doesn't require very much. We heard the US really trying to encourage the court and others to ignore history, to sweep the historical conduct of many decades of emissions under the rug, and saying that what happened before the climate agreement was adopted doesn't really matter from a legal perspective.
The judge's opinion won't be legally binding, but it will carry weight, says Ridgwell.
As a kind of legal blueprint for accountability, or a guide for courts and advocates around the world to understand what international law requires and what we should be holding states to in terms of their climate action and their measures to remedy climate harm.
Representatives from almost 100 countries and intergovernmental organisations will testify to the court, with the hearing due to end on December 13th. The judges are expected to deliver their opinion next year. Henry Ridgwell, VOA News.